Okay, for my presentation, I chose an image from one of the first Balkan Wars, and this image was of soldiers in a trench. They're Turkish soldiers, and that's on the second slide. And in this particular image, it was the era in which cholera had really begun to strike the army, and so cholera is an incredibly lethal bacterial disease and requires medical attention to be treated, which usually involves antibiotics and today intravenous fluid supplements, because one of the primary symptoms of cholera is diarrhea, which causes dehydration, obviously. And from 1910 to 1913, which was the Balkan Wars era, 12,143 people died of cholera, and 18,876 were infected. And so in this primary source image, you can pretty clearly see that the proximity that the soldiers had with one another was just like a breeding ground for infection. And also the water was not particularly available to be clean, and it was an overpopulation thing in infirmaries, so it was really hard to contain this viral spread, so it actually erupted into an epidemic. And so it was imported originally from Russia, but it traveled through human contact and made its way into Istanbul and then into further war grounds. And so what was also really significant about this infection was that deaths by combat were multiplied by tens of thousands of civilian deaths because of that spread of disease. And so the infirmaries were like grossly underprepared to contain the epidemic. And so it was kind of a critical point in modern warfare, just of needing to further considerations about medical attention on battleground sites. And so the casualties were also massive and were multiplied by the cholera. And so it was from the First Balkan War, 65,000 Bulgarians, 9,500 Greeks, 3,000 Montenegrins, 36,000 Serbians, and 125,000 Ottomans. And so this is also a really critical point in history for us as well, in considering the containment of an epidemic, as we're seeing with the COVID-19 pandemic that we're dealing with now. And one of the main tactics for containing it is to stay home and stay isolated from other people to avoid as much human contact as possible. And in times of war, this is especially difficult. And so that was a really big issue with the First Balkan War.